It is 85 degrees in the Bay Area today. Mother Nature trying to delete corona. Hey everyone, it's Catherine. Right now it's either a really good time or a really bad time to be talking about personal finance, but it is my personal crusade to talk about money and finances in my personal life as much as humanly possible, because that's how the rich get richer, folks. These rich old white men are just sharing tips like it's nobody's business all day long with each other, and we're dodging the topic entirely, but meanwhile we're missing out on the juicy habits and personal finance success that a lot of our friends may be having because we're too uncomfortable to ask. I'm here to fully expose myself, no holds bar. I don't believe in keeping things to myself. That's why I'm on YouTube. I'm a chronic oversharer. That's exactly why I'm gonna get as specific, as transparent as possible in this video. I'm trying to give you all the advice that I hadn't heard before and has benefited me to give you somewhere to start. However, I fully recognize that I may stub some toes by talking about saving and investing strategies when 20% of this country is unemployed, and it's similar throughout the world. If you want to watch more foundational finance advice, I made a personal finance video around this time last year, so you can check that out in the description. So here we go. For me, the first area to tackle in personal finance is spending and your expenditures and how to get those tightened up. Namely, to build your credit, to propel your savings. The more you can optimize this category, the better, obviously. Number one, if possible, make several payments on your credit cards instead of just one a month. Why? It's gonna raise your credit score, period. This applies to car payments, loan debt. I personally have my credit card payments on auto pay, but if you make multiple payments towards your credit card balance every month, it shows that you're dependable and consistent, which will boost your credit score. Then make sure that you haven't dropped one of your credit cards. I started my credit journey maybe 3 years ago. I had non-existent credit, so I got a very basic Chase card that had zero benefits, zero cash back. It was literally just to build my credit. It basically was a debit card, but with interest. Now that I have a Chase Sapphire Preferred, that's my card, and I love it. If you've been meaning to open a credit card, I'll have my referral link in the description. Gives you 15,000 extra points and me 10,000. To be perfectly transparent, it's a win-win situation. Anyway, once I got the nicer credit card, I threw the other one in the back seat and basically forgot about it and never bought anything on it, never used it because it didn't have rewards. But on the advice of a lending advisor, she said to make sure to at least like swipe the card for gas or something, you know, $50-ish in value a month on your lamer credit card, just to make sure that you show a utilization rate that also helps your credit score. Another spending strategy I use to kind of inhibit my spending is to set up alerts to text you every time you get a charge for something over 1 cent. There's a couple things that this will do actually. Number one, it ensures that you know immediately if a restaurant or store overcharges you or double charges you. And number two, mainly it keeps your spending top of mind. The beauty of credit cards and the reason that whole industry exists is because it doesn't feel like cash. When you swipe a credit card, it doesn't feel like you're being robbed of that money. You don't really think about it. It doesn't connect with like the emotional piece of losing money when you spend something, and the credit card companies like it that way. So to fight back, we all check our texts, and at least through Chase, I set up alerts on every single one of my cards, my debit, my credit, everything to show when I'm spending, because when you're having a spendy day and you just keep getting those texts and you see the balances add up before you, it's not a pleasant feeling, and it kind of works against our natural inclination to not have these losses of money. Just makes a spending spree a little bit harder, which is nice. We also want to avoid lifestyle creep, which I didn't know about until I watched my girl Tiffany Ferguson's video on this topic. I will have that linked below. Tiffany is a fantastic creator and I could not be more proud of her success. If you're unfamiliar, basically lifestyle creep is the principle that we always assume that when your salary goes up, everything just gets easier. Once you hit 6 figures, suddenly you have no problems in the world and you'll be super, super wealthy. The reality of it is that as your income goes up, naturally so does your spending. It's extremely natural to, once you hit certain milestones in your income, to start to sort of elevate your taste. Suddenly you're shopping at Rag & Bone instead of ASOS. Suddenly you're going to Michelin rated restaurants instead of Applebee's. It happens. You can't blame yourself, you just have to defend against that natural inclination. Easier said than done, but here are a few ways that I suggest combating that actively. Number one, treat your savings account like a luxury car, nicer apartment, nicer furniture, etc. Idolize your savings hitting $20,000 instead of idolizing the moment that you'll have enough to buy that Burberry trench coat. The more that your savings account becomes that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the less you'll be blowing your coin on bougie items that are not going to get you any further in life. They're just not, I'm sorry. Second way to defend against lifestyle creep is to build a budget, and not just one that you think of on the spot, one that's data driven. There's my inner tech girl coming out. Make sure you actually download your spending history over the past 12 months and use that to build what your average is per category. Then even when your salary hopefully doubles, you're still saving the same percentage of your income. You can still upgrade your living situation or your car or whatnot, but just keep it proportionate to your savings goals and make sure that's not bumping up. The third thing I thought of fits into one of my core beliefs, which is that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I was gonna make a Harry Potter metaphor there, but I won't. I'll hold back. Especially with lifestyle creep, the more spendy your friends are, the more natural it is to shift your gaze off of your savings account and onto that coffee table from West Elm, those designer shoes that you're probably only gonna wear 3 times. Like, if you have friends that like to be frugal and talk about their savings, that will permeate your brain. Instead of materialism, which is the bedrock of this country, but one way that I try to shift my friend group more frugally is to always give my friends the option when I say, hey, do you want to do dinner this week? I always ask, do you want to cook in or do you want to go out? That way, if they are trying to hit, you know, a savings goal, I'm not sort of like winging them into going to a restaurant where you're gonna pay 25 bucks for dinner or whatnot. Making dinner together, you get a sense of accomplishment, you get to test out their knife skills, important to know about your friends, and you have leftovers for the week. So it's like a triple win if you do that. Just surround yourself with people that aren't always just chasing the next best thing. So that's lifestyle creep. I did want to acknowledge that decreasing your spending is really, really hard. It's not fun, it's not pleasant, it doesn't mesh well with our serotonin, it just doesn't. But you do have a choice. If you want to increase your savings, you can either spend less or earn more. That earn more category is so often neglected. I love the way Chelsea Fagan talks about it, if any of you follow TFD. You do have the option where if following a budget and making dinner instead of going to a restaurant is painful for you, you don't have to strain yourself. You could build a side hustle or negotiate your salary for a raise. If those things sound easier to you, and putting in the hours and extra mental work to create a side income or justify a raise, if that's more appealing, like that's totally an option where you could keep your spending the same, but if you're increasing your salary, that's gonna increase your savings. Next, we're gonna dig directly into my savings tips. The first governing principle of saving is when you got it, deposit. All credit to Hey Berna for that little line. So when your paycheck hits, usually on a Friday, deposit as much as you can directly into your savings right away. Let the joy of the direct deposit flow right into your savings account. And don't give yourself the time to forget about it, second guess it, any of that. Don't give yourself time to do anything but tuck it directly into your savings. And don't be conservative about it, don't be shy. Carve out as much as possible for savings and leave yourself with a very, very close amount to what you'll use that month. As far as where to store your savings in the first place, let's get into it. It's my firm belief that 100% it should be in a high yield savings account. I was an absolute loon for not using a high yield savings account up until last year. It's literally free money on the table. Typically the savings accounts that a lot of us already have with our major banks have a return of 0.01 to 0.07% annually. That's all the interest you're gonna get, which is pathetic, especially when you compare it to the fact that inflation is around 2% annually. So if you're only increasing by 0.01%, you're actually losing money based on inflation, if that makes sense. The alternative that a lot of people don't know about are these high yield savings accounts, which give you anywhere from 1.2 to 1.7% interest. You do have a lot of choices for which vendor you use for your high yield savings account. I'm gonna link the very article I found from NerdWallet that did the best job, I think, of running down which accounts are better than others, the pros and the cons, their top runners. It just makes it easy. I used to have my savings in a Wealthfront account per the recommendation of one of my friends. I do love me some Wealthfront, but they slashed their rates at the beginning of this year by a significant amount. So I recently used that article to switch to Marcus by Goldman Sachs, which had a return rate of 1.70%, like the very max I could find up until 2 weeks ago when they also slashed it to 1.55%. So I could keep just toggling around and keep switching it out if I really wanted to maximize my money. But that is one of the factors of these high yield accounts, is that the rate itself is not going to be consistent for the whole year. There are ups and downs just based on the Fed and obviously the crisis we're in right now. This is the one tip that every single one of you watching probably can do right now within an hour, is to figure out which one you want to start using and put even $1 in. Like whatever you have in your savings, dump that in.
Bump it. Bump it.
High yield accounts give you that peace of mind that your money is working as hard as it can for you and you're getting as much of a boost as you can without going into the stock market and doing something riskier. Your account's never gonna go down, it's just gonna go up at an accelerated rate. There's also the question of how much to put into savings. How do you figure out that golden ratio, that golden amount every month? I'll start here, and that's with an emergency fund. My dumb ass did not have an emergency fund until late last year. I really thought maxing out my index funds was more important and that I could use that money for an emergency, but no, you do need an emergency savings account, and it should represent 3 to 6 months of your livelihood. This is crucial right now. It's all that's on my mind, is getting to the 6-month kind of maxed out emergency fund balance. Going even deeper, leaving no questions unanswered, no stones unturned, is how do you figure out what 3 to 6 months is? For those of us with budgets, it becomes easy. If you don't have a budget and don't plan to make one and you want to live your life that way, I dig it, laissez-faire. What I would do is rent plus your bills, so your fixed expenses like your utilities, gas, electric, water, Wi-Fi, car payments, loans, and then groceries, like your average grocery spending per month, and then take that balance of everything added up and then take 10% of that and add it on top to become your monthly total to beat. Focus on it, focus on it, focus on it, like above all else before you do investing or anything. Like, we need to have the emergency funds, even if some of us think that we're in positions or industries that are very, very stable and kind of recession proof. Crazy shit's happening right now and you do not wanna with it. For those of you that have already maxed out your emergency funds, congrats to you. Make sure you're steadily contributing towards retirement as well. But if you already have that squared away and you're now just kind of working towards saving at large, you know, there's no specific, you know, fund you're putting it into, it can get kind of fluffy. It can get easy to be relaxed and kind of ease up on aggressively saving. I wasn't even done maxing out my emergency fund and this sort of apathy already started to wash over me. I didn't get out of it until my mom literally forced me on the day of my 24th birthday, right after a bottomless brunch, to immediately go tour some condos that were having open houses. I'm really thankful she pushed me to do so because so much came from it. So much more than I would have thought, at least. So as soon as I started seeing condos that I could actually envision myself in, that were actually within financial reach, now I had an exact vision for like, this is the neighborhood I want, this is the price range I want. Knowing exactly the down payment I would need and the monthly payments I would need, that sort of lit a fire under my ass to actually make these places a reality for me. And suddenly this became my sort of why behind my saving. Before that, I'd been just kind of blindly, loosely saving whatever I could for one day, you know, buying a property most likely, but that's not a goal. And it doesn't have to be a house for you. Just figure out what your why is. You know, why are you saving? What is it that is going to fuel you? Is it saving up for a graduate degree? Is it buying a house? Is it paying off your debt by a certain age? Workshop your self-awareness and figure out why it's valuable to you, what date and time you're gonna hit that goal at, and how much you need to hit it. This is the most sincere and like compelling motivation I've had in the past, you know, 3 or 4 years that I've actually saved my money. Having this like very concrete goal of exactly what I need was so important. And also, don't sell yourself short. It's very easy to put the goals out just beyond, you know, your reach, you know, when you're 30, when you're whenever. But it is actually helpful to challenge yourself and pull that goal in right within where it starts to get uncomfortable. If I want to buy a condo within the next 3 years, that's like just stressful enough for me where all I want to do is save. It's also way more exciting when it's happening soon, when it's not just like way out there in the future, in the shadows, it's right there in front of you. Like, it's just, I don't know if you can sense my excitement, but I really thoroughly have like a refreshed mindset now that I have this fine-tuned goal. So spend some time, think of something exciting for you. If you have it right now, write it in the comment section, put down your goal and what age and why it's meaningful to you. And okay, I'm going to pick one of the comments and I will donate some of my own hard-earned cash to a comment at random. I think I'm gonna call it $100. That's $100 I could be saving for myself, but I'm going to give it to one of you because God knows we all need it right now, and it would psych me up to see that we're all talking about money together and putting shit out there. Another savings motivation tip is to keep an app on your phone that tracks all your saving accounts in one. For me, that's Wealthfront. I could put in my company retirement with my personal IRA, with my personal emergency fund, other savings, investments. It'll link all of your accounts together, and the reason I suggest doing this is that every time I log in there, no matter what, even if the balance has gone down, it really excites me to see that there's a tangible balance there and that my savings isn't just going into the ether, like it's right there in front of you. Nothing brings your savings goals top of mind like opening an app and seeing that you're making progress, like you're on your way there, why stop now? It's hopeful for me to see it. Next, within savings, I did want to acknowledge that shit happens along the way. You know, saving is easier said than done. We're all in very differing situations and roadblocks come up all the time. If you've ever heard of mental accounting, this is where it could come in handy. Mental accounting is a behavioral economics principle that I was introduced to in my behavioral economics class in college. Yes, I was a business major. We don't need to talk about it. My professor talked about this in a really clever way, I thought, and that was that she and her husband had a kind of like oops fund that they created between them. They just put in like $500 every year into this oops fund. And every time one of them would get a speeding ticket or just get a nasty bill out of nowhere, they'd take the money out of the oops fund to pay for that and to cover it. For them, it saved their marriage because there was no more fighting about like, why'd you do that? You're detracting from our savings. For them, it was, no, you're not detracting from our savings because we had this set up in the first place exactly for scenarios like this. And even though that money still could be savings, like rationally it's still money towards savings because if you don't use it, you could still save it. But because you've categorized it in your head as the oops fund, suddenly it alleviates a lot of pain that we have when we lose money unexpectedly. Work the system to your benefit. Use this tip to max out your HSA if possible. If you do have healthcare, max that sucker out. I could not be happier that I did that this year because fortunately all of my healthcare bills that have been piling the heck up, I've taken all of that money to pay for it out of my HSA account, which is not taxed as well as a benefit, but it just has alleviated that feeling in my brain of seeing it come out of my checking account. And then if you are someone that is really spendy and you know yourself and you know you're not going to be happy unless you do your bougie dinner once a month or you buy that, you know, luxury item, whatever it may be, create a dumb shit account for yourself. Create an account where you limit yourself to say, I'm only going to spend $200 a month on this or whatever it may be. That way, once you've seen that category shrink to zero in the month, naturally, mental accounting wise, you're not going to want to take money out of a different category to cover that. So don't be afraid to make more than one savings account or more than one checking account when it can benefit you so much in these situations. Last category to talk about, if you've already maxed out your emergency fund and you know you're putting towards retirement and you have your savings on lock, you may want to think about investing some of your money. This is the category I get a lot of questions about. I do not feel like an expert, but I have not regretted any of my decisions with my investments. You do have options for how you invest. One of those is putting your money into the stock market and buying individual stocks like to Tesla or to Apple or whatnot. When you do that, to me, it's gambling like you're in Vegas. That's how I feel about picking stocks. My very own finance professor from USC actually advised against investing in the stock market like that because of the efficient market hypothesis. Not to throw another term in your face, but it is the one lasting thing I took away from my 4 months in my finance class. It's that important and it's that life-changing. It basically says that all stock prices, all share prices, already reflect all the information and cues possible out there in the world. It says that stocks will always trade at their fair value, making it impossible for people like us or even investors to buy stocks at an undervalued price and then sell stocks for an inflated price. Therefore, it's impossible to outperform the market. Even if you think you're an expert at it and you pick the best stock or you have great timing, this hypothesis says it doesn't matter. You're not gonna beat the market consistently. Like you might one year, but the next year you're gonna have a loss that'll make up for it, is basically what this is saying. Not to burst your bubble if you love to invest in single stocks, but it is just sort of like the stock market where it's a gamble and it's not, for me, the most consistent way to put your money towards investments. So if the stock market is not what we think it is and investing in single stocks isn't all that it's cracked up to be, what are we supposed to do? Well, that's why a lot of the money that previously had gone to money managers that were doing this sort of active investing with individual stocks, that money is now flowed into passive investments through index funds, which is pretty much exclusively what I put my investments into. Index funds almost seem just too good to be true. I think a lot of people question them because they are just so godly, and it flips the stock market on its head, and it's a completely different way to invest that my finance professor recommended. He said, pick a large cap ETF and ride that sucker out and you're gonna be guaranteed to make money via this graph that he showed us. Even if that was propaganda, I believed it and it formed the basis for how I invest today. The beauty of the index fund is that you do not have to pay the high single stock fees or the high financial advisor fees that come with active investing. Suddenly you're wiping away these like kind of insidious fees that creep into your investments. I talked about index funds in my last video and the question I got was, well, which one do you choose? Thanks to my boy Jack Bogle, there are quite a few index funds to choose from. I personally, just exposing myself, have my money in about a 65-35 split in VV and VCLT on Vanguard. I use Vanguard because John Bogle created Vanguard. It just makes sense in my head. Synergy, photosynthesis, whatever buzzword you want to use. Those are the only two index funds I've used over the past, what, 2 or 3 years. They are pretty common funds to go with. I'm personally going to start shifting a lot of my money into the S&P 500 index fund. It just tracks the S&P 500, so you're getting exactly the market return. I'm now realizing I didn't even explain what an index fund was, but basically an index fund, it's the opposite of a single stock. It takes an index of like hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of stocks, and you're gonna take like 0.00001% of every single one of those to add to your whole index fund. And so that basically neutralizes a lot of the risk of the stock market. If Tesla crashes to zero and it's only one of your 1,000 stocks, it's not gonna hurt you more than a few bucks. That's the idea behind it, and it's an idea that I'm wholeheartedly into, along with index funds. One of the things I was concerned with is, when do I buy into the index funds? Do I have to wait for a moment during the week where that index fund is down? That way I can maximize my return on it. Like, how do I get in at the right position in the market with these funds? The last principle I'll throw at you is dollar cost averaging. On God, I learned this from Graham Stephan. I'm not proud of it. Anyway, dollar cost averaging just means that if you have $1,000 to invest in an index fund, don't plop that in all at the same time. Take $200 increments of that 1,000 and deposit it on the 1st of every month. So $200 February 1st, $200 March 1st, $200 April 1st. And what that does is it averages out the buy-in points so that over time, if you keep doing it that way, you're not gonna see a huge impact of when you bought in. Like, you're gonna gather up all the different buy-in points and neutralize it. As much as my conceited ass wants to believe that this video will have a lasting impact on you and your personal finance health, you'll probably forget 95% of what I said, just like I did with my finance professor. So, possibly two of the most lasting, important tips I could leave you with are to, number one, while you're watching this, pull up your Instagram and follow 3 different personal finance Instagrams. You get to choose. I'm gonna list all my favorites below. And then number 2, start talking about personal finance with every single person you can. Most of this video, as you can tell, I compiled from one professor here, one professor there, one friend here, one YouTuber there. Like, that's what it takes to really build your financial health and wealth, is to not just blindly follow one source. I'm happy to be one of your sources, as long as you subscribe to me, please, thank you. If this video helped you, don't be shy, pour some more in the form of liking this video. I really appreciate you guys watching. I will see you all next time, and Katherout.